Today is the last Sunday after Pentecost, the Sunday we now commonly observe as Christ the King Sunday. Today we confess that there is but one king, one ruler, one president that Christians serve. A claim that, when Christians have been bold enough to make it, has always cost them their lives. This is a day when the church gets eschatological, when we look ahead to the day when, as St. John's Revelation says, the kingdoms of this world will become the kingdom of our God and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Today we get a glimpse of what it means to confess that he shall come again with glory to judge both the quick and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. On this day, we see that all hearts truly will be open, all desires known, and no secrets shall be hidden. Jesus has been telling parables in Matthew 25. We've heard them the past 2 weeks. The parable of the 10 bridesmaids waiting for the return of the bridegroom, and the parable of the master who entrusts his servants with various sums of money before embarking on a long journey, expecting each one not only to look after what they've been given, but to invest it and to grow the master's wealth. According to Jesus, awaiting the king's return is no idle task. It's not just a matter of looking out the window every couple of minutes to see if the car has arrived. It's a matter of scurrying about the kitchen, hoping that there are just a few more minutes before the doorbell rings to ensure everything is in order. The final story in Matthew 25 can hardly be called a parable. We know it is the parable of the sheep and the goats, but it reads more like an apocalyptic vision. Instead of a bridegroom or a man going on a journey, we're presented with the Son of Man himself. Instead of imagining what the kingdom is like, the kingdom is like a man who went on a journey. It's like a certain fellow going from Jerusalem to Jericho. The kingdom of God is like someone who scattered mustard seed. Instead of any of that, we're given a glimpse of who Jesus really is behind all these images of bridegroom and sower and father and all these things. We get a glimpse of Jesus. We get a glimpse of what his kingdom really is, not just what it is like. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then shall he sit on his glorious throne. And like a shepherd who each night separates the sheep from the goats, so will it be with the Son of Man. A shepherd who keeps both animals will separate them at night, moving the goats with their thin hair to a warmer place than the woolly sheep need to be. Of course, none of that is the point of what Jesus is saying. He's saying that this eschatological sorting will be so natural, so obvious, that he won't need to deliberate or overthink anything. It will be as easy as a shepherd separating the sheep from the goats before calling it a day. Which is to say that judgment is not one of weighing the scales to see if your good deeds outweigh your bad ones. The implication is that it'll just be so obvious to the king what sort of person each one of us are. Judgment is less about that one time you did something really good or that other time that you did something truly hideous, and more about the totality of the life that's been lived. According to Jesus, the totality of our lives can be summed up by how well we love others, how well we give. Whether it's a cup of soup or a warm blanket or simply the gift of our presence. For in doing these things, the person it turns out we are serving is Christ. Neither the righteous nor the unrighteous see it in the moment, and that's the point. He wants us to understand that there should be no difference between how we would treat him if we encountered him and how we would treat a stranger, or worse, an enemy. Lord, when did we see you? They will answer in reply. We saw lots of bums and addicts. We saw our share of criminals. We saw tons of welfare queens. We saw lots of illegal immigrants with no respect for our laws trying to cross our southern border. We saw a bunch of people facing the consequences of their unhealthy choices. We didn't see you. We wouldn't have treated you the way we treated those people. I'm absolutely horrified, the woman said to a friend of mine shortly after he began his ministry in a new parish. If I had known that was your family, I wouldn't have said anything. Thinking his wife and kids to be visitors, she had complained to his wife about their children's behavior during church. I'm not so sure that the problem is that you said it to my wife, my friend replied. I think the problem is that you still think it's okay to say the same thing to a visitor who isn't my wife. Of course, the righteous are equally unaware that they ever encountered Jesus because their work is not performative. They weren't on their best behavior because they thought this would give them some reward or because they were worried about punishment. This is simply the sort of people they were, regardless of who was watching them. I want you to notice that in this story, no one is cured, no one is freed from prison, no one is lifted up out of poverty. No policy changes in Washington have been enacted or reversed because of what the righteous have done. No one is expecting you to discover a cure for cancer or to successfully eliminate poverty. As a side note, only for those who make wealth and possessions their God is poverty a problem to be solved. The righteous are praised for meeting the immediate need that is before them, which is all any of us can really ever do. Moreover, that's precisely how God's gifts to us work. In the scriptures, the man who amasses a handsome crop one year and decides he can retire and live off it forever dies that night and is called to account for his selfish hoarding. In the wilderness, the people of Israel were commanded only to take enough manna for one day, trusting that God would provide for the next, and for the next, and for the next. In the Eucharist, small portions of bread and wine feed us with the body and blood of Christ. Yet we return week by week to ask for what we cannot earn or produce on our own. Simply to extend our hands and receive enough for right now, as we are made holy, not in an instant, but gradually, over time. We who are dependent upon God for our every need dare not ask the most vulnerable among us to do something that even we, in all our affluence and privilege, are still incapable of doing before God, that is, providing for ourselves. There is a knock on the office door, a welcome interruption to an otherwise uneventful committee meeting. It was Rick. Rick would come around once or twice a year looking for assistance. This afternoon, he needed a night at a hotel. It was going to be below zero that evening. Well, I went back to my office to book a night for him. One of the guys on the committee began berating Rick, asking him why he expected us to care for him if he wasn't bothering to get a job and care for himself. There are a lot of people hiring around town, Carl said after Rick left. I'm one of them. You need to be more careful with the church's money, Father. If he wants help, he should try helping himself. Funny, another member of the committee said. I don't recall the sheep being praised for how carefully they vetted the hungry, the poor, and the stranger before meeting their needs. In the end, C.S. Lewis was right. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal, Lewis says. Next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. Because your neighbor turns out to be, in the end, none other than Jesus himself. And if we believe that, I think that would change our entire life.